Hello everyone and welcome back to OrmsTV. My name is Jess and this is the video where I tell you all the reasons why the Canon EOS R5 is going to be an incredible camera for video shooting. We received the full specifications for the Canon EOS R5 last week when Canon launched the product, and quite honestly, this camera appears to be a game changer for serious videographers everywhere. Today, I wanted to take some time to speak about the specific specifications of the R5 that are going to make a massive difference in the way that we can shoot and post-process our videos. But before we dive straight into this video, let me first give you two recommendations for other videos that you can watch for a little bit of additional context and information. Firstly, last week we released an exclusive first look at the Canon EOS R5 and the R6 and all the lenses and other accessories that Canon launched at the same time. That video contains a lot more photography related specs and Andre and Dion's initial impressions of this new gear. If you're interested in finding out more about the R5 in that aspect, then you can find the link to that video in the description down below. Secondly, many of the digital imaging principles that I will reference in this video were discussed in much greater detail in a video that I made back in June about why you can't get your video footage from your DSLR or mirrorless camera to look like a film. I recommend that you watch that video if you would like to better understand all of the factors that I'm going to talk about today. Again, you can find the link to that video in the description down below. Okay, without further ado, let's start breaking down these specs. As Dion and Andre mentioned repeatedly in our first look video, the fact that the Canon R5 can shoot uncropped 8K video truly elevates this machine head and shoulders above everything else in the market right now. Nothing else, certainly nothing in this price range, in this size, and with all these other features can do that. Yes, it is true that you cannot necessarily view 8K on most devices, and it is also true that depending on who you ask, the human eye can't really see much of a difference in any resolutions higher than 2K. However, shooting 8K has massive benefits, just even when you consider how much you will be able to reframe in post, or even just how insanely crisp 8K video is going to look if it's exported as 1080p, 2K, or even a 4K file. The other reason that this is such an exciting development is that a few years ago, we would not have even dared to dream that shooting 8K on a full-frame mirrorless camera would be possible. Resolutions of that magnitude were reserved for those with access to full-on cinema cameras that cost hundreds of thousands of rands and were completely inaccessible to all but the tiniest segment of the creative community. Canon providing us with this option in a camera of this class says something about the direction in which the industry is headed, and that is beyond cool. Internal raw video shooting. I can't actually quite believe that this will now be an option in a Canon camera like this one. To my knowledge, the only comparable cameras that were capable of shooting raw internally rather than having to write onto something external like an SSD were the latest range of Blackmagic Pocket Cinema cameras. Please correct me in the comments if I'm completely mistaken about this. Those cameras are awesome, no doubt about it, but they also come with a lot of drawbacks, like poor autofocus performance and a lack of IBIS, which are all complete non-issues in the R5. For those who might not be aware, shooting video in RAW means that every single frame of your video clip is comparable, similar in quality and responsiveness to a frame of a RAW photograph taken on the same camera. The difference between shooting video in RAW and some other codec like H.264, H.265, any of those other ones is basically the difference that we have in photography when we talk about shooting JPEG and shooting photographs in RAW. This means that a similar amount of latitude that you would have had available to you when it comes to color correcting and grading RAW photographs will now be accessible to you when you're color grading and color correcting your video. I've worked with color in raw videos before, and let me tell you, if you haven't done it yet, wow, you're in for a real treat. By the way, Give this video a like if you've ever color graded raw video footage before, or if you would just like to work with raw video. Okay, just give this video a like, full stop. It would make me very happy. You'll know if you watched our first look at the R5 that it can capture 12-bit video internally if shooting in RAW, and 10-bit video internally if using one of the other file format options. This is huge. Once again, 10-bit internal video recording has not been something that's been widely available to videographers who prefer to make their films on DSLRs and mirrorless cameras. Most of the time, we've been limited to 8-bit, which severely hampers our freedom in post when we're trying to correct issues or create looks that we've come up with. Shooting 10-bit internally, let alone 12-bit, means that we will now have access to a minimum of 1,073,741,824 possible colors in the images we create. This means that we are now one step further away from worrying about artifacting and similar issues when going for a more ambitious, involved color grade. Sure, in the past you could have hooked your camera up to an external recorder to get, something like a 10-bit ProRes file or something similar to that. But now you can skip that entire step and it's no longer necessary for you to acquire another piece of gear just to execute your creative vision. If you don't know what color sampling is, I'm going to once again refer you to our video where I explain what it means and the impact that it has on the quality of your video footage. Link in the description. In the past, Canon mirrorless cameras and most, if not all, of their DSLRs were limited to a 420 sample size when shooting video internally. This meant that any captured color information was being compressed by half, both vertically and horizontally, and the absence of this color information that had been thrown away meant that we encountered issues like color banding and similar problems relatively early on in the color grading process. 422 is still widely considered to be the standard for broadcast, and it means that we are only dealing with a 50% horizontal compression in our color information. This is going to make a massive difference when you get into post and try a more extreme grade. Once again, this is a huge step in the right direction from Canon, and I could not be more pleased. Some nice icing on the delicious color cake that Canon has baked for us is the fact that the R5 and the R6 for that matter will be able to shoot in C-Log, Canon's logarithmic profile. The point of why this is so exciting, of course, relates to the advantages of having a non-linear gamma curve that I discussed in the video that I keep mentioning. What I will say right now is that having access to C-Log in cameras like these means a great improvement in dynamic range, the simultaneous retention of details in your shadows and your highlights, and much greater leniency in terms of how far you can push your color and luminance values in post. Sure, you could have had C-Log added to your 5D Mark IV in the past. However, it is doubtful that that model and similar models were even able to output a sufficient bitrate to support a C-Log gamma curve. With the R5 able to pump out up to 2,600 megabits per second depending on your chosen mode, this is not something you'll need to fret about any longer. By the way, 2,600 megabits per second is an absolutely wild bitrate. What do you think of these specs so far? Share all your thoughts with us in the comments down below and we can have a chat about them. A final digital imaging factor that I would like to mention is that the R5 offers internal video shooting in an H.265 file codec. H.265 is the successor to the aging H.264 codec, and it offers double the compression while still maintaining the same visual quality as H.264. It also offers a lot of advantages in terms of decoding and supporting greater resolutions like 8K. That's pretty cool, if you ask me. I actually had the opportunity to test the IBIS on the R5 before we shot our first look video, and oh man, is it good. I was shooting on an 85mm lens, and even as I was moving around with the camera whilst wearing high-heeled boots, may I add, it was relatively easy to get a smooth and steady frame. Having such solid IBIS is going to be a great advantage for Canon video shooters. It means that you could hold off a while on buying something like a gimbal, or if you're someone who likes to shoot handheld anyway, it means you won't be held back by aggressive camera shake, even despite the R5's lightweight construction and small size. The lack of sensor shift in body stabilization in Canon's cameras in the past has always been something that has bothered me as a video shooter who uses Canon products. It made other brands like Sony and Fujifilm look a lot more alluring, even though I was such a fan of so many of the other things that Canon was doing right with their cameras. Knowing that we have this remarkable IBIS in the R5 now is so exciting, and it has definitely incentivized me to stay within the Canon ecosystem when I next decide to purchase a camera. As you'll know from our first look, the R5 utilizes Canon's new dual pixel CMOS autofocus Mark II and features mind-blowing head detection and eye tracking in humans and pets and wildlife that was developed from the same deep learning system that the 1DX Mark III uses, which we tested out a little earlier on this year. Quite honestly, I have never seen autofocus like this before. I thought that the 1DX Mark III was good, but this is just a different level. Even just using it in a selectable point functionality is better than anything I have ever shot with before. It stays locked on to whatever you've selected as your point of focus, even when something else moves across the frame and completely blocks your field of view. It is complete and total madness. Yes, traditionally in video, we would have focus putters who would make sure that our subject remained in focus, but for single human run and gun shooters like myself, having a autofocus system in the camera that we can rely on is absolutely crucial, and the one in the R5 is certainly up to standard in terms of that. Thanks for sticking it out with me while I fangirled over the EOS R5, everyone. As mentioned in our first look video, we are expecting to get a fully functional model from Canon real soon for some in-depth testing, so consider subscribing if you would like to get notified when that video comes out. As always, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, cheers.